Hello, good morning, everyone. Let me know if you can hear me and see the screen all right, and we are ready to go. All right, let's have a look. I have the chat next to me, so if you guys have any questions or any suggestions about what I'm about to start working on, feel free to put them in the chat. Good night, good morning. Alrighty. So for today, I thought we could start with something very different, or at least very different from what we've been doing in the previous live streams, and it's something related to what we are currently doing in my Discord server, which is like we're trying to set up like small challenges, or like kind of like short art challenges every month. And last month was the source of Discord. I just want to show you kind of like some of the entries from the people that participated. So these are some of them, which are pretty cool. So if you're in the Discord, obviously you will see them in the submission channel and everything. But yeah, so this is like the type of things that we're trying to aim for. Obviously, this is kind of like a play on words, and yeah, like a reference to the Rings of Power series. So kind of like the same type of poster, and the whole challenge was about creating a character without like a face, or like just being able to portray the essence of the character just with a pose, like the prop in this case, like a sword, and just the hands and the type of creature. So yeah, a pretty interesting challenge. So really cool stuff. And today we're going to be working on something related to the current challenge. So that was last month on July. So August, we're working on a Fortnite prop, or like a prop that looks kind of like Fortnite-y, like that. Right, so if you're interested in joining the challenge, it's free to join. You just need to be part of the Discord server, and yeah, all the rules are in there. You get like different prices every time, different things, which is pretty cool. And another cool thing that is kind of like new as well in the process that we've been kind of like working is, so let me bring it here. So these are some quick sketches, I suppose, some AI generated sketches from Midjourney. So I did a quick setup of like this type of thing, and it's pretty impressive what comes from Midjourney. And this is kind of like the idea, just to create to get the creative juices flowing a little bit. So that's a series of options and alternatives for like a gun in that sort of Fortnite style, and I think it's pretty amazing what you can get. Obviously, there are certain things that really don't make much sense, and it's ultimately just an AI generated stuff. But again, to create a mood board, or to create something to iterate faster and just generate ideas, it's like, it's a no-brainer. So I think I like a few ideas from different, these are meant to be guns, like sci-fi type of guns, that we're gonna do in a Fortnite style, with that sort of nice stylization and exaggerated things. So yeah, this is the idea for today. We're gonna do booleans and a bit of ZModeler, and if we don't finish it, we'll just continue next session. But yeah, so I'm just gonna put that on the side. Again, what I think I'm gonna be using is a little bit of this silhouette for this this gun, but and I kind of like the idea of these two as well. Just the fact that they're not like the typical gun, and I'm thinking of doing kind of like a portable flamethrower or something like that, like the equivalent to a revolver, but in a like a flamethrower type of thing, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's gonna be like a handheld gun. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I have for you today, and yeah, we can go ahead and get started. So I'll just have it in a separate monitor so I can keep track. Oh, by the way, let me just send you the link in case you want to join the challenge and everything in Discord. It's in there. Hi, Irene. How you doing? All right. So I'm going to start very simple and then create complexity later on with like insert meshes and that sort of thing. But just to show you that I approach things like prop building or something that is more hard surface in the same way that I would approach any organic, like super high detail model or anything like that. It's just the same thing. Working on the basics, focusing on the primary shapes, that sort of thing, like the silhouette working well. So I'm going to start with that. So I have just a normal sphere here that I'm just going to turn into a cylinder. And I can start with a cylinder straight away, or I can just use the gizmo, click on the gear icon, and just select the polycylinder or the cylinder 3D. The difference is that the ends of the polycylinder are kind of like square, like, you know, quads basically, which could be very useful in some situations. But in my case, I'm just going to use the 3D, the cylinder 3D. And you have these cones, obviously, that allows you to change things like this. Add a few pieces. So I'm just going to add a few like that. And I think 16 should be fine. I'm going to keep it relatively low res and, you know, potentially use dynamic subdivision. Again, we're going to be using a bit of both worlds in terms of kind of like box modeling with the ZModeler, but also the live Boolean type of process, which is kind of cool as well. So I'm going to click on gear icon, gizmo, and I'm going to scale that. So I'm going to try to create that sort of the barrel of the or like the main gun bit. And it's just about setting up the the bases. All right, so let's leave that one there for the time being. And let's do something for the handle so that very quickly we have something that we can work with. So I can duplicate that and then just click on the Q cube. And this Q cube, which stands for quick cube, you can find it in the initialize subpalette here. So if you click on quick cube or quick sphere or quick grid, you will be able to create these very simple meshes based on the resolution that you set up here. So if you want more than right now it's 2 by 2 by 2, you can set up to 5 by 5 by 5, and you will get the same kind of like deal. All right, so this one is going to be the handle of the gun. Let's just again do something simple. And I'm trying to look at the kind of like the proportions of what I mentioned before, like the sketches that I have from Midjourney. All right. Give it a bit of an angle. And that's it. That's our gun. Obviously, that's too basic. But starting like this is really helpful because you can visualize the proportions. Like you can say maybe, oh, this is too short or too long, and yeah, and kind of like figuring out the balance before you go any further into any other detail. Okay, so let's go ahead and select. I think I want to select this guy, duplicate it, and let me just show you what I'm looking at here, so that you have a better idea of what I'm planning to do. So in these examples, there are like this type of hanging pieces or this like bulky area in the front. I kind of like that as well, and it has contrast a little bit with the handle here. So I'm gonna try to exaggerate that, maybe add like a tank. Yeah, actually like a gas tank or something in front, and then sort of like an ignition type of thing here. So that's the type of things I'm looking for in this case. Righty, so I'm gonna duplicate that cylinder, and I'm gonna try to do this a bit faster so that we get into the good stuff. All right, let's say something like that should be okay. Again, keeping in mind that the idea is that it's like a prop or something that a character from Fortnite might use or might carry. I'm just gonna try to keep it like within the stylization. All right. Let's see. Let's just work on this first, just to give it a bit of shape. And we can turn on dynamic just to see. Yeah, that's pretty decent. Selecting the ZModeler, so BZM, and I'm just gonna maybe hide everything but the top, and then Control W to assign a different polygroup. So we have a different one, and we can go ahead and right click, QMesh, and polygroup all, just to make sure that we select just the polygroup. So I can just literally do this, right? So what I want to do is actually scale this, which, you know, you can use the gizmo. In fact, let's do that a little bit faster. So holding Control and dragging just to select that, bringing the gizmo center to the unmasked areas, we can just do that sort of thing. So that's probably faster, or you can also use the bevel tool, but I think this works fine. All right, so now what I can do is just extrude this bit. And if I press Alt before I letting go, I just create new polygroups. So that's always, not always, but it's a good idea to do that. So I'm gonna do it like that. And then click on this new polygroup, the purple one, push it in. And you see sort of like snaps to the next sort of, let me just show it from here. So if I use the QMesh in this polygroup, if I push it in, ZBrush is going to snap to the next loop, and that way basically just close that gap, or vice versa. If I push it out, it's just gonna close it or merge it with the next one, like the red one, right? So either way, you know, I just want to push it in a little bit just to create that little gap, and then we can right click here, go to bevel, and bevel that bit as well, right? And if we want to have like a smoother transition, we can do the same thing like this. But you know, that's probably not what I want. I think something like this might work. Maybe what I want to do is isolate this, mask it, invert the mask, and just bring that up a bit as well. So we have this nice sort of bevel that's going to be created here. We could potentially just scale this a bit. Yeah. You know what? I think I'm just going to scale it a lot more. Right? So this is going to be the gas kind of like bottle. I'm going to right click on this edge, and I'm going to use this slide tool. Oops, right click, make sure that the target is to edge loop complete, so that we slide the entire set or the entire loop. I'm going to place it around the middle there. And that should be fine. And I'm going to mask that out. Oops, holding Control, click and drag, invert the mask, and center to the unmasked areas. All right, so now that this is a little bit sharper, we can right click, bevel, and bevel that bit. And maybe a little bit as well here. And just for good measure, just let's add another one there. All right, so this is how it's looking with dynamic subdivision. We might need to, let's add another level of subdivision. So that's looking good. And I think here at the top, we can add another loop. So if I right click on an edge, click on insert, click and drag, that would sharpen this edge right here, and another one there. So this is what we end up with. And I'm going to do the same thing at the top, very close to the top. And that's pretty much it. Let's just go. At the bottom is looking fine. So I think I'm happy with this. And again, all these tools that I'm using here on the left-hand side, that should be on the geometry palette, dynamic subdivision. This is what I'm changing, and I just added a third level of subdivision here. So you could do the same thing. All right, so that's kind of like the gas bottle, which is fine. Let's just select this guy here, the main piece of the gun, and just enable dynamic. add a couple of subdivisions so that we can see it a little bit better. And this is going to be the handle, but it at the moment is very, very basic, right? So one thing that I would suggest though, which I didn't do, is use the home and the target stages. Because right now I just tilted things, so it might not be as easy to work symmetrically. So let's go ahead and do that. In fact, let's go back in time before I moved it. Yeah, so something like this. And I'm just gonna put it in the center of the world as well. Although, you know, doesn't really matter because we're gonna work in the x-axis. So basically, this symmetry axis. If I enable symmetry, we can work on that. But I can set this to be the home stage, and all of those switches that I have here, those would be here under the stager. So geometry subpalette, click on stager. So you have the home stage, target stage, and then switch stages in here. So I'm gonna click home stage, and then now that I have that set up to be symmetrical in the center, we can go ahead and do what we did before. It doesn't matter if we scale things up or down. It's gonna be fine. All right, let's say something like that, and then we can click on target stage. So what that does is that we can just switch stages with this this button here. So it goes between what we kind of like posed and we have ready, which is in an angle, and this switch stage, which actually helps us work symmetrically. So that's the idea. And we can use, we can use Dynamesh or ZModeler, anything that we want to make it work. Rhiannon, have seen you wear glasses in some previous streams. Special glasses for doing 3D art. Yeah, those glasses make me better at 3D. Actually, I don't know what I have them. I don't need glasses, but I use them when like I just get tired sometimes, and those glasses have like, I think it's like a blue light, the cancel blue light or something. I don't know exactly what it is, but it just helps. It doesn't fix my sight or anything. It's just to so that I don't get headaches. Basically, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's like a blue. They cancel blue light or something. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and use the ZModeler this time. I'm gonna go into solo mode to kind of like arrange these into more like a handle type of thing. So I'm gonna right click on an edge, click on insert, and determine where I want to place some things. So I'm just going to add some loops, but keep it very, very simple. I think that should be plenty. Let's reset that. And I'm going to hold Control, invert that mask, and scale. Same thing here. So I'm just using masking to kind of like change the shape a bit. And then I'm going to right click on this center line here, go to bevel, and bevel that. And if I enable dynamic subdivision, you see it's kind of like a bit nicer than what we had before. But again, still, like, we still need to do a lot of work on this one. But now, this is what I want to show you. We can click on switch stage and you see it's still there. But we have the ability to work symmetrically and then just visualize the pose. And that's what the great thing about this. All right. So I think for this, how we make this interesting would be, by the way, another cool thing is that you can switch to the current stage, which is where it's posed, and you can also do tweaks right here. So let's right click on insert, add another mesh or another loop right there, and another one right here. And then we can mask. Let's get out of dynamic so we can see it. We can mask these points, invert the mask, and then just move them out like so. All right. So yeah, that's kind of what I was looking for. And then I want to do kind of like a spike or something like a handle here for, like, let's say if this is the handle, that a little bit of mass or a piece that sort of rests on top of the, you know, I don't know, like this area of the hand, just above the thumb. Maybe, or maybe this is fine. We'll see. I'm gonna not right click and drag to create another one, and that sharpens that bit. And then I'll do the same thing for this one right here. So without dynamic subdivision, that's how it's looking. I can do this and then mask this point. And the masking that I'm using is just because I don't have any perspective. So I know that I'm masking everything from the camera. So I can click and drag holding the control key, mask that, invert the mask, and bring in the gizmo. Right? So when I go dynamic, this is what we get. So that's fine. And maybe do another one here. All right, so that's one way. I just wanted to show you that that's one way of doing it. If you want to maintain kind of like this really nice, or like this soft, yeah, the soft bit, the soft look. I'm gonna mask these points. Just start pushing things around. And you know what? Maybe let's add another loop here. So that is not as sharp. Yeah, so that's much better. Right, and then we still have like this kind of like messy area, but I'm not too worried about it because we can use series measure later on. Just wanted to get, again, this process before I get into any details or any polishing or anything. This is still like blocking out things, right? Another cool kind of like tip that I can give you is you can use the move brush with the AccuCurve enable. That's the one that allows you to move like pointy areas a lot better. And if you want to move all of these at once, what we can do is from the brush palette, let me bring that to the right. There we go. So from the brush palette, we can go to depth, and in depth you have this infinite depth. So if you click on the one, in this case should be the X axis. So let's click on that X dot here, or like this tiny X, and let's remove the Z and enable that. So if I click on, let's say, this point here, just to show you, and do this, right? And I rotate around, you see all of that point is kind of like a needle going through. It moves the entire thing. And that's the same for anything that goes in that sort of like camera projection in a way. So this is super handy to, from this angle, you know, go ahead and move things around to adjust the shape. Again, some of the polishing of these shapes, that's going to be done after a quick series measure, but just want to show you that this is pretty handy. So I'll be able to just adjust. I mean, it's not too bad. If I spend time polishing this properly, I could just use it as my base mesh for like a low res. But yeah, this should work fine. Alrighty. So this is how the dynamic subdivision is looking, and still we have the ability to go back to the basic state, or the unposed stage, the home stage. Alrighty, cool. So we have something that looks alright. Let me just have a look at the chat if there's any questions about this blockout. Hey guys, welcome to the stream. what else is here? Sherry, Wacom. Is Wacom really essential for ZBrush? I don't think Wacom particularly is essential for ZBrush. Any tablet is definitely gonna give you an advantage, even if you're just beginning with ZBrush. I know artists that just use the mouse, but if you want to sculpt, and this, for me at least, there's nothing better than a tablet to help you achieve your goals faster, and you have a lot more control of pressure, and it feels more natural as well. But it doesn't have to be Wacom. There's a bunch of X-Pen. There's a bunch of different options that are probably cheaper. I always say this, I'm like very biased because I've been using Wacom for like years, and I think it's kind of like the best. I know the other ones are really good as well, but for me and what I do, I think Wacom is the best, and it's very reliable. So I think I would go with that. But you don't have to use, for instance, I'm right now on a Cintiq. You don't have to use a Cintiq. I used just the Intuos Pro, like a Bamboo for ages as well, and it's perfectly fine. If I'm going, let's say, overseas or I'm traveling, I just take my Intuos with me, just put it into a bag, and it's the same thing. It's just the difference is you draw directly on the screen if you have a Cintiq, or on the tablet, on the Intuos, just outside of the screen. But yeah, I think it's really important to have at least one type of tablet. I would recommend that, but it doesn't have to be Wacom. I would recommend Wacom because, like I said, I'm very biased, but I know there are other really good brands. All right, so I'm just gonna sharpen this area here. And the next thing I wanna do is, this is still like pretty blocky. So what I can do is add maybe another loop in the middle. So right click, let's go with bevel, click and drag. And if we bevel this, like maybe do it without dynamic so that you can see. And I'm also, let's see, the move brush, I'm gonna turn this off before I forget, because sometimes I do that and it could become a bit messy. So click and drag, so something around there in the middle. And what we can do with this is actually push it out. So if I right click on a face, make sure the Q mesh is selected as well as polygroup all. Again, once we do the bevel, we have a new polygroup, and that's the great thing about it. We can click and drag to extrude along the, along the same polygroup, or click and drag to extrude again, and then press the Shift key to push it out. So that sort of gives us a more rounded, smoother version. But I don't want to do that on all of them, as in all the pieces. So we can try to mask areas. In this case, I think that will be the easiest one. Or we can hold the Alt key and tag the top and bottom, right click and select polygroup, and then just click, and then we can click, and while I still have the click selected, or I'm still clicking basically, I haven't let go of the pencil, of the pen. I'm just gonna press Alt just to change the polygroup a little bit, and then go back, right click, Q mesh, polygroup all. And now it's just going to do it. It's just going to do whatever we do only on the green one, right? Because we have that option selected. We have the Q mesh, but it's polygroup all. So ZBrush is going to look only at the specific color that you started when you click, right? So because now the top and bottom are pink or purple, then they're not going to be affected. So I can do this and then hold the Shift key, and we have like a nice rounded shape, right? So if I enable dynamic, now this is going to look, yeah, a lot nicer, right? Which I think that's kind of like the idea. Yeah, all right, cool. So we have our blockout almost ready. And I think, just like thinking about like the, I don't know how they name, I don't know the name of this actually. It's like in a flamethrower, like at the end, you have like this barrel, like this tube that has some holes in them. So I want to have that in the tiny gun as well, just to make sure that like it's like a flamethrower, but like super compact. That's the design idea that I'm going for. What am I concepting here? Yeah, let me show you actually. So here on the right hand side, I have this set of quick ideas that I generated with Midjourney, the AI tool that's phenomenal. So I have like some cool ideas, not again, it's not perfect, but just to get started and to iterate faster just by putting some text, you get these type of things. So I think I can't remember what I put. I don't have it open, but I put like Fortnite style accessory weapon concept design type of thing. So yeah, but this is the type of thing that I'm aiming for, but it's gonna be slightly different. I'm just using some ideas from it, as in things that I find interesting, like shapes, colors, contrast, silhouettes that I like from those sketches, and then just building my own thing. All right, so I'm gonna select this guy, the main barrel. You know what? Just for the sake of, let's just leave it as it is. I'm gonna duplicate that, right? Bring in the gizmo, and I'm gonna scale that up a bit, just a tiny bit. And let's go ahead and hold Control and Shift to access the selection tools. And I'm gonna select, let's say, I'm just looking at the, again, proportions ideas. I don't know, maybe, you know what, let's just leave it as it is, like that. All right, get into solo mode. So we have this cylinder, and I'm gonna delete hidden, right? Let's turn off dynamic for the time being. And also, let's delete the bottom area. So hide that bit, delete hidden. And I think that looks all right. So now we can rely on dynamics of deviation to add thickness to this, make it obviously, you know, look better, and then we can extrude it a bit. This is gonna be the kind of like the cover of the protection for the, I don't know if it is a protection, but it's like a something that makes it look a bit more like a flamethrower. Hopefully this is gonna make sense in a second. So I'm gonna click on dynamic. Also, if you don't want things to shrink when you click dynamic, right? Because that's ultimately what ZBrush is doing, right? It's going to subdivide each polygon. You can simply click on the crease section. So crease, I have it in here, but I'm just showing you where it is. So in the crease section, you can click on crease polygroups, or PG. So that's gonna click crease the polygroup border, and that sort of like sharpens things. Obviously, the corners are still not as sharp, but just because now there's this distance between this point and this point. So if you want to sharpen that, you can just right click, add an insert mesh or an insert loop like this and like that, and that will sharpen it. But I'll leave it as it is for now. And let's add some thickness. So I'm just gonna click on thickness. And again, this is just a dynamic thickness as well. And I'm just gonna exaggerate it because that's the point I'm trying to make here. Alrighty. Now, if you look at it from the center, right? If I go into solo mode, you see that the thickness is happening from the center of that single-sided mesh, right? So this is the single-sided mesh. The thickness is being applied at the outside of the normals and then to the insides as well. So basically, the actual single-sided polygon that we have, or this plane, is at the center when we enable this thickness. So if you want to change that, you can just use the offset and then just push it to 100, and now the thickness is happening from that plane just in the positive normals, or vice versa. If you just do -100, it's going inwards, right? So you see the thickness is happening inwards. So let's do +100. And if I want to move this, by the way, let's turn this off. If I want to move this closer to the cylinder, what I can do is, with the Q mesh selected, make sure that polygroup all selected, click and drag, which is ultimately extruding. But if I press the Shift key, I'm just gonna kind of like scale this on along their normal. So that allows me to sort of bring it closer a little bit, maybe a bit more. Holding Shift again, and now the dynamic is happening closer to the cylinder. So that is pretty cool. All right. So in order to add a bit more of thickness and you know what I want to create with this piece, I'm just gonna turn off the smoothness to 0 so that I can visualize this just the thickness, right? And let's just position this a little bit better. Maybe scale it a bit. I'm still deciding what to do with this, but I think this makes sense. Okay, so I like the thickness. At the moment is dynamic, so I can change it. You know, you can make it a bit, you know, shorter like this, but I like it as it is. So what I'm gonna do is apply the thickness with no subdivision. So if I click that, what I have is just, you know, extruded cylinder. Like if I literally just click and drag with the Q mesh to add thickness to this piece, and that's it. Let me have a look at the chat. How do I know measurements of an object? Like in Blender, I can see the millimeter. It's not, that doesn't work like that in ZBrush. So if you're like into 3D printing and you actually want to make sure that you know how big things are when you 3D print them, it is different, but it's like super powerful. If you click on the C plugin, there is this 3D printing hub, and that allows you to set up, you know, the ratios, the size, the, you know, if it is millimeters, inches, you know, it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. I don't have, you know, anything here to show you, but if you go to, like, this is the 3D print hub, but you can also use the scale master, which is another C plugin that comes with ZBrush, and you can set the scale for whatever you're using, right? So you just need to set the scene scale, and it was just gonna ask you like, oh, what you have in there is like similar to, let's say, 5 millimeters or 5 centimeters or 5 meters, and then you just choose whatever you think is closer, and then you can adjust the rest of the subtools. I don't know if that helps, but yeah, for like 3D printing, there is a dedicated area for it. All right, so moving on with this, I'm just gonna hold the Alt key with the symmetry selected so that I can do both sides at the same time. Right click, and I'm just gonna add a polygroup. Or wait, actually, we don't need to, but just for the sake of it, let's add a different polygroup right there. And right click, Q mesh, polygroup all. So I'm just gonna push this down or just extrude that a little bit, like so. And because it's not going straight, if you want it to be right in, you know, like in the, I would say the Z axis, no, the Y axis, you can flatten this bit first. So let me just show you how that looks like. So from this angle, I can just mask everything, invert the mask, or not everything, sorry, mask this, this plane that I want to flatten, bring in the gizmo, center to the unmasked areas. Again, I have the symmetry enabled, so that's why it just jumps between the two. And then I'm going to flatten this piece on the Y axis. So I'm just going to do that. Oops. Let's do that. A few times. So now this is, you know, flattened against the Y axis. And because I did that, it was in a bit of an angle, it sort of like changed the thickness a bit. So I can enable the local symmetry, which for you guys would be on the transform palette, local symmetry here. And that way we can scale things based on that portion that we have selected. So I can just scale this just a tiny bit like that, just to compensate. And I'm kind of like eyeballing it, but that works. And we can also, instead of using the ZModeler, once we have an area like this on mask or mask, we can hold the control key from the gizmo and then extrude using the gizmo. So that is pretty handy, right? So you don't have to use the ZModeler for everything. You can mix and match different workflows. Okay, so this thing, I'm just gonna push this past this area. I think, yeah, something like that should be okay. Let's clear the mask. And I'm also gonna clear all these dotted lines because those are creases. I'm gonna click on crease all from the crease palette. So it's cleaner. And I'm gonna right click on an edge, insert multiple edge loops this time. I've been just adding one at a time. Now I can click and drag and add these ones like so. And I think that should be okay. And just to simplify this even more, I'm gonna right click on this on an edge, any edge, and I'm gonna click on delete, edge loop complete, and I'm just gonna delete all of them because right now I have them like a bit too stretched. So what I wanna do is make sure that I have like a consistent quad size, like almost like squares. So now I can right click, go to insert, multi-edge loops, click and drag, and then determine this. So that's kind of like what I was after, more like square pieces, right? Let's have a look. For the holes, we'll use booleans. We can use booleans for some kind of holes. Like I said, I'm planning to show you both, a bit of both processes. Yeah, okay. Cool. So first, let's go ahead and change these a bit just to make it a bit more interesting. Let's tag these polygons, maybe these 3, and then push up just to collapse them there. Maybe one more time. Yeah, that looks all right. And I think we can bevel this a bit. Nah, actually, let me just think what we can do here to make it interesting. I think I'm just gonna cut it. So I'm gonna mask an area like this that I wanna protect. So all of this is masked, and I'm gonna select the knife curve and then do this. Right? And because I protected I protected this area with the masking, just sort of like looks like nicer. Oops. If I enable dynamic, it will remember the previous settings. So I'm just gonna remove thickness, add smoothness. Obviously, this area doesn't look great, but it doesn't matter. We can just remesh the whole thing in a bit. Yeah. So I think that's looking all right. Maybe take this one, click on it, and push holding the shift key just to push it like so. In fact, that's how we can just do this one in case. Yeah, let's undo that. Let me show you something else. If we want to maintain the clean base mesh, we can just do that. We can click here, hold shift as well, and then it sort of like connects there nicely. So we can do the same thing here. Tag those, click and drag, holding shift, and it just moves that forward. And to bring this close again, we can just mask this, push it back. All right, so now that should give us like a nicer, nicer flow. So I kind of like this as well. And all I want to do is just sharpen the bottom, or like the edges here. So let's click and drag, oops, right click, insert, single, click and drag, and click and drag here. Right. We could also sharpen this one, but I think I like this as it is. Maybe a little bit, just adding an extra one there. Let me push this one closer. Okay. All right, so you see, like bit by bit, we start to add, starting to add complexity to this. Let's set up the kind of like the trigger thing, and for that, maybe we can just use this bit, duplicate it. I'm still setting up the blockout, and I think we have like 15 more minutes to just do that, and then the rest we can start building some more complexity to it. All right, so I'm just gonna duplicate, rotate things around 90 degrees, and kind of like establish this rounded bit area here. So again, I'm trying to maintain like a, even though these are, you know, this is just the setup, to maintain some kind of like continuity with the line. So that's why I'm trying to placing it in this section. And then we can bring in another cylinder. Actually, let's just click append, click on cylinder 3D, select that, rotate 90 degrees, go into solo mode. And what I'll do with this is I'm gonna hold control and mask the bottom area, and then hold control and click and push. Actually, before I do that, just to make it easier for us later on, hold control and shift, oops, with the selection tool, control and shift to select just the end bits of the cylinder, invert that selection, and then delete hidden. Okay, and then we can hold control again, select that, invert that, and then use the gizmo to hold control and extrude that along bottom. So that's gonna be for the trigger. Just push that down a bit. All right, I think that works. Clear that. And obviously, just now that we have this, we can use the dynamic with a bit of thickness to set that up. And that works. And I'm also gonna remove a bunch of this. So let's do the ZModeler, right click, delete, and edge loop complete. So let's, oops, enable symmetry as well, just to work a little bit faster. And then bring this closer. Alrighty, enable dynamic, turn off the smooth subdivision, and yeah, I think let's play a bit with the thickness. Alright, so I'm gonna apply it with no subdivision, just thickness, pretty much what we did with the top area. Bring the gizmo, let's center it here. So instead of a trigger, it's gonna be like, you know, you can put like all the fingers and just, you know, like a spray type of thing. So I think that would work just fine. Let's set this to home stage and let's position this a bit better. I think that works. I mean, I'm not great designing this type of things, but and let's set this to target stage. So again, we can switch and work with symmetry as well. Okay, so that is working fine. We could also enable dynamic with this without thickness, obviously, and add a bit of smoothness. I kind of like the fact that it's kind of like a tube, like a rounded tube instead of a, yeah, I kind of like it. So let's do a quick save. And I think this is the most basic shape, right? So what I can do now is from the front, maybe let's actually give it some quick colors just so we have them as a reference, and then we can start building some complexity. We still need to block out a few other things, but as a main silhouette, main shape, I think this is fine. In fact, let's just select this guy and duplicate it, like the barrel thing, duplicate it, scale it a bit, push it forward. So yeah, so let's say this is going to be another part of the blockout, and then hold control, or maybe just duplicate that. And so, sorry, duplicate it, push that back, And this is some kind of like, I don't know what it could be, but it makes sense in a sci-fi world. Maybe it's just some kind of protection thing so it doesn't backfire or something. All right. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna select this kind of stuff. I'm gonna duplicate it. Go to solo mode. I'm gonna turn it into a cylinder 3D again. And just put something here at the bottom. Again, just to add a bit of contrast with the shapes. And I think maybe something just to connect these two. So I'm going to take the same one, duplicate it. Push that up. Maybe just for the time being, I'm going to hide that piece. Alrighty. And one more thing just to finalize this blockout. I'm just going a little bit faster because it's more of the same. So I'm going to duplicate this, go into Q cube, right? This guy here with dynamic. So what I can do is turn off SMT, which is subdivide smooth modifier, to subdivide things without actually smoothing. So it's just going to add the subdivisions, but it's going to keep the shape. Delete lower so that we have this type of thing, which you can achieve the same thing by setting up the resolution to 4x4x4 in the quick cube anyway. But yeah, so this is going to be just a tiny piece that we can extrude here. Just to sort of like connect this a bit more. All right, and then using the ZModeler to add another, oops, insert loop. There we go. And I'm gonna hold Control and mask this bit, invert the mask, and we could just assign a polygroup, or we can just scale this. You know what? Let's do the inflate. Yeah, that's probably better. All right, let's do it manually. So I'm gonna hold the Alt key using the symmetry, tag this, and the back doesn't really matter. It's gonna be hidden anyway. And I'm gonna hold the Shift key to push this out a bit. And then I'm just gonna fix this by holding Control in that area to mask that sort of set of points, invert it, and then just push it forward and down a bit. Alrighty. I think that is already looking much better. Obviously, lots of things to work on, but this is the base. So what I would like to do now, just to show you something else, and also now looking at this, I think this part is a bit too thin. So I'm just going to use the inflate, which is for you guys on the deformation palette. Inflate here, just to add thickness to this. You know, keeping in line with the stylization, I guess. Alrighty. So now that we have these, let's go here. And I'm just gonna assign a simple color just so that we know where we're working with. I know that the examples that I showed you guys are mostly like yellow, kind of like construction type of thing. But I think I'm gonna go for an orange like this for the tank. And the reason as well I added this cylinder at the bottom is just to add, you know, I'm just keep looking at these references or ideas, and there's a lot of contrast between, like, you know, lighter colors like the yellows, the oranges, and the dark grays or black. So just want to maintain that idea as well. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to select a orange color fill object, then select the one at the bottom, darker gray, right? And let's say for the handle here, we can go for some kind of metallic, I don't know. Let's go for this sort of color. This is going to be a lighter gray or maybe darker. Still not decided. Just want to add a bit of contrast. So just selecting each piece and applying color. And there is something going on here. Oops. Okay. Yeah, but like very early on, you can sort of like establish those block of colors, which will be cool. And we can add something else just to make it a little bit more sci-fi later. I'm going to use the ZModeler in here just to add one edge loop, like sharpen those things a bit. Oh, that edge maybe here as well. And now that we're here, actually, I'm gonna go into solo mode. I'm gonna tag all of these, and then I'm gonna use the QMesh with polygroup just to push that in, holding the Alt key once just to assign different polygroups, and then click again, and then click again, and then click once more, and maybe add an insert edge loop there. So it's just basically I extruded this inwards to generate this piece. So that the next thing, this bit, fits nicely in there. And if we want to make that sort of barrel thing, I guess we can do that now. Let's do that. Oops. Yeah, let's do that now. I'm gonna go into solo mode and the symmetry on. Click on symmetry. I have polygroups as well. So I'm going to use the ZModeler, right click on one of those edge loops, and I'm gonna go for bevel. And I think I want to target this one right here. So this is going to determine the thickness of the next bit that I'm going to extrude. So it's going to be something like that. And now that I'm here, I'm going to tag these polygons here and use the QMesh now to intrude this, or like extrude this inwards rather. And then this one outwards, like so. So now I can right click again, insert. I'm going to add one there just to sharpen that bit. And then one to sharpen this edge as well, and one to sharpen the transition here as well. So now if I go to dynamic, this is kind of like what we have, and I think it works. Yeah, I think it's fine. Okay, so another thing that I would like to set up as a blockout first before we do anything is like this type of thing. So I envision this to be some kind of like the spark, so that if it is like a flamethrower, you can ignite the flame with this with something like that. So for that, I just need to think about where that would be, because it is a pretty big thing. And to be honest, I think we can just get away with just having it in one side actually. So we're gonna break symmetry a little bit by adding, I'm gonna append a sphere, a C-sphere. Here we go. And I'm gonna move that out of the way. I'm gonna scale that. In fact, this could be, yeah, This could be the beginning of it. So let's move it away. So maybe it starts from the side here, or on this side. Again, I'm kind of like designing as I go, so I'm just making decisions and see how things work best. So let's say somewhere there. Right? Okay, yeah, I think I'm fine with this. Then with the draw, or with draw selected, I'm gonna click at the top and drag to create another one. And then if I hold the shift key, it's going to snap to the previous size. So that way I can maintain a consistent size when I do this. So let's go forward like so. Click on draw, click and drag, holding shift to make sure the entire set of these Z-spheres is consistent. Another one, click and drag, hold shift. That kind of thing. We'll fix the position and adding more. I'll add more in a second. But again, with Z-spheres, it's kind of like the same thing as working with any other mesh. Like if you establish the main frame or the main position of, let's say, the bends of or the joints with Z-spheres, then you can just add more in between and adjust the resolution. Click and drag, holding shift. And this is what I mean by this. I'm just gonna push this kind of like all the way there. Let's just add another one right here in the middle. And then I can do this. Click and drag, holding shift. Click and drag, holding shift. So I'm just creating that tube. Okay, I think something like this would be fun. All right, so now that we have this, I can use the draw to just add bits in between. So let's say, for example, this area right here. Let me choose a different color so that you can see a little bit better. So this one right here, I want to make it a bit rounder. So I can just click a couple of times, let's say there, and that would allow me to push this one in and create that sort of bend shape. But because I established already like the main points, is a lot easier. Same thing with this. I can just add maybe 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. And then I can just adjust the placement so that this thing goes around. Okay, we're getting there. You know what? Maybe this is closer to the whole barrel thing. Alrighty, that's the idea with the Z-spheres. It's a pretty simple and easy way to create these more sort of like complex shapes. You could have done it just with extruding a cube as well, but I think this is a lot more fun. Let's have a look at the chat. Sorry about the bot. Like it's just sending way too many things. I'm sure there's a way to tweak that, but yeah, it's just like taking over the chat. So it's I just need to scroll to. Okay, here we go. So when are good situations to use Stager? Like for instance, this is using Stager actually. So in case you missed that, so the handle here, it is kind of like in an angle, but I have the home stage to be kind of like in this sort of straight mode, so I can use symmetry in this case. So I can enable symmetry and work that way. If I switch to this stage, I could basically turn this sideways like this if I need to, and then when I switch back to the home stage, I can still work with symmetry. So that's one way of using these Stager tools, which I think are pretty good. This one as well has stage, so I can just set it like so and then go back. And I think I forgot to set up the stage, the target stage again when I moved it, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, that would be one way of doing it. So now with this C-sphere, what I'll do is I'm gonna go to the stroke palette, and at the bottom we have this curve helper, and that allows you to convert the C-spheres, the chain of C-spheres, into a curve that then we can replace with whatever you want. So I can click on copy C-sphere chain. So now ZBrush copy that into the memory, or I don't know, whatever it is, into the ether, and then I can click on create curve. So I'm gonna click, and it also has this append new. That's gonna create a new Q cube and append that curve there so that it doesn't mess with anything. So that's what I want. Click on create curve, and you'll see this is a new cube. If I go into solo, that Q cube has that curve, right? And that curve follows the center of those C-spheres, so it's pretty accurate, and that's pretty cool. So again, with solo mode, what I'll do is I'm gonna select something like the curve tube, right? And that way I can basically, with the brush size, decide how thick this is. So if I want something similar to what I have for the C-spheres, maybe I can just go a little bit smaller, and then if I need to, I can inflate everything. Yeah, so let's go here, click once, and then we will have that straight away. So that's pretty cool. And now we can hide that cube, we don't need that. Delete hidden, and we can just move that C-sphere into its own folder. Let's call this the OR, the originals, and hide that. And there we go. So that is pretty cool. Obviously, we can use the move brush to adjust this, but I think it did a pretty good job. You can also, like, if you think it's like a bit too messy, like the topology, you can remesh this whole thing. So one tip I can give you, I'm gonna go ahead and use the slice curve that I have here. You can access the slice by holding Control and Shift, clicking on this thumbnail, and select slice curve. So I'm gonna slice the mesh like so, in the kind of like in the same areas as I changed as I rotated the C-spheres. And that's just adding polygroups, nothing fancy here. And for the bottom as well. All right, so what I want to do with this, just to fix it a bit, is to select the select rectangular piece, hold Control and Shift to hide the kind of like the caps of this tube, delete hidden, and then hopefully if I just run a zero measure keeping groups, we can remove the smooth groups, we don't need that, and click on remesh. That will get us something a lot nicer, and as you can see, it just preserves those cuts where we did them. So that's a very quick and easy way of adjusting that. And because this one is fairly clean set of loops, ideally we want to reconstruct that, but yeah, it's not happening because of the open geometry. So we could try to close that. So right click, close hole, convex hole, click and drag, add a few loops, I'm just gonna click once to repeat it. I think it's fine. Let's reconstruct. Oh, these triangles here. Yeah, that's right. It's not gonna work. So I can just do it manually. Just get rid of some of these loops or try to target less polygons. There we go. I think this is perfectly fine. It's a little bit better. So all I did was in the ZBrush palette, which is the the tools that I have here at the bottom, we can go to ZBrush, and in here you can tell ZBrush you wanna go by half of what you currently have or set a target polygon count. So that's the slider I have here. So if you set it to 0.5, this is a number that is in the thousands. So 0.5 is like 500 or something, but it's kind of like you also have adaptive on, so it will adapt depending on if you have crevices and things like that. So yeah, that's a quick way of doing it. I'm gonna also smooth things a bit. And the cool thing about this is we can now close this. Like so, and click once again here. And I'm gonna right click on an edge, go to bevel, a bit of beveling here. There we go. And enable dynamic just to make it smoother. But yeah, I think this piece is working fine. I'm just gonna make it way darker. All right, so now that I have this, what I want to do is actually create like what's the name? Like the silhouette, right? What's the name? The thumbnail. Sorry, the cam view and the thumbnail with this. So go to preferences, go to cam view, right? I'm gonna set the size to 250. That doesn't matter. We can change this later, but so that we can start with this. And I'm gonna click on make cam view. So ZBrush is gonna take whatever we have in the canvas, is gonna create a series of images, right? So from different angles and around the mesh that you have there, it could be anything. And then we can just turn on cam view and the thumbnail. And actually for the thumbnail, we can open that up here. And I'm gonna change the background to be black so that it basically inverts the color. So the background, when you set it to black, ZBrush treats it as transparent. And now we can see this as a white thumbnail, which we can click directly on the thumbnail and drag like so, right? And now we have the ability to have the silhouette just to keep track of how everything looks. And we have this cam view, so we can move things around quite quickly. All right. So yeah, so now that we have this, let me just have a look at the chat, and then we can start adding some more interesting bits and pieces, the booleans that I've been mentioning, and kind of like refine this idea. We probably won't have time to finish it today, but we'll see. We still have time. Alrighty. My shapes are correct, but proportions are terrible. Can you please tell me how should I fix it? What kind of things I should do that will improve? Well, I would say like this would be a generic answer because yeah, obviously I'll have to see what you have to be able to answer. But it's all about the primary shapes. So if you say that the shapes are correct but the proportions are not, then everything is out of balance. So what I would recommend is just keep things at the lowest possible subdivision, or blocks of geometric shapes like this that have no, they're very, very straight, very simple. Don't worry about the shapes first. concentrate on the proportions, which is what I've been doing here. Just make sure that, you know, this oversized canister, you know, like in a real world, it will be really heavy to hold it, right? But again, this is just, you know, sci-fi, fantasy, whatever. So, but it makes it visually more interesting, and those are the ratios that I keep like thinking of. The same thing with the color. So we have this very prominent bright, and the rest are just like, you know, shades of gray, like desaturated. So that is the same thing as proportions, like the proportions of the use of color, the proportion of the size, the amount of details. So you can find the balance a lot better if you just focus on very simple shapes first, and then the shapes will come after. So I would reverse engineer what you have, and again, it's hard to answer that question, but go first with the proportions and very simple blocks, and then worry about the shapes. So, and what I mean by that is, like, if you're blocking out the arm of a character, go with like 2 cylinders for the forearm, and the arm maybe a sphere for the joints, and that will help you to set up the proportions first. And then when you have that and you're happy with this, then you can move on into the shapes, which is obviously adding the mass for the biceps and, you know, the extensors, all of that will come after. That would be the second step. Alrighty. Would it be easier to use adaptive skin to create skin from the C-spheres? It is an option, but it's not necessarily faster. I mean, you can, if you want to do something very simple, you can. Let me show you what that means. If I go to the C-sphere that I have, let's go to adaptive skin, right? We can set this Dynamesh resolution to 0 so that it doesn't use Dynamesh. And then I can just click on density, set it to 1, click on preview, and then you will have this, you know, pretty clean base as well. So you can totally do that. I just wanted to give you a kind of like a different avenue to build things. So this one works quite nicely. You can increase the density, click on preview, and then you also have a similar setup. The more, as you can see from probably here, the more C-spheres you have, the more sharp breaks that you end up with. So if you create an adaptive skin with this, let's just, for the sake of demonstration, let's click on make adaptive skin. Let's turn that off. So the adaptive skin is going to ultimately create a new tool, which is this one right here. So you could do that. And then go ahead and do the polish of the shapes. So I'll probably have to run this a few times, or do it in a lower subdivision level. Right. So yeah, you can totally do that. This is still a pretty clean mesh that you can use, and you can tweak that as well. So yeah, you can totally do that. It's just different ways of doing the same thing, and I kind of like to mix it, and that's how I sometimes find workflows that I go like, oh, this could be useful for something else. Just trying different things, the same, you know, arriving at the same point, but like using different ways of getting there. Can we select vertex and move them in ZBrush? You can. You can do that with a move brush in a really small brush size. You can use the ZModeler to, like, you can right click on a point, and then you can click on move, which is the default one. So I can click on this point and move it around. You can do that. Yep. Sorry about the bot. Like, it's really, it's very hard for me to sort of like follow the questions. I wonder if there's a way to change that, if I can change it. Let me just see, because it's just taking over. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. So sorry if I miss one of your guys' questions. Just bear with me. I'll just have to scroll because there's like so many bots now, or like the bot is just going crazy with the same thing. Anyway, so for those of you who arrive a little bit later to the stream, the reason we're going for this type of like prop design is because in my Discord server, we're actually working on a challenge. This one, I'll just show you. So we're working on the Discord server, we're working on this challenge for this month of August, which is creating a prop like a gun or like a helmet, something that a character in the Fortnite style can wear or carry, right? So it's just a prop. It doesn't have to be for any particular character, or it can be, it's up to you. And then you just create something like what I'm working on today for the challenge. And there's some like cool prizes to win as well. So if you just join or if you're already in the server, it's free to join. Just start posting your work in progress in there and share it on social media. You can participate. So that's the reason I'm kind of like giving you tips on how you can achieve this type of simple but cool look for the challenge. And just to be safe, let's just go ahead and I'm gonna share the link to the Discord in case you want to join in there if you haven't. But yeah, that's the reason we're working on something like this. Just to give you, and in the previous month we already finished, so I'm just gonna share the winner after today's live session. And that, like, this is just to give you an idea. This is another challenge that we did last month. So these are some of the entries from the artists in the Discord channel. The idea was to create kind of like a similar style of presentation style like the posters of the Rings of Fire, which is just the characters holding a prop, mostly like swords or like an axe or something, and then just the hand so you don't see the face, which I thought it was a pretty interesting idea to kind of like portray the essence of a character without necessarily showing the face. So that was the challenge, and some of these ones are really, really awesome. And the cool thing as well is that this is just a challenge for a month, so you can like push yourself to create these type of things in a very short span of time, and that's how you can either fail faster and get better at it, and just create a portfolio piece very easily. Alrighty, so let's move on and continue with a little bit of this. So now that I have these, I'm gonna go ahead and put everything, maybe not yet, but I was gonna put everything into different folders. Yeah, but I think it's just fine. So I wanna select this guy here. I don't know how I call it. Let's just hang on. I moved something weird there. All right. So I don't know how to call this one, but I'm just gonna duplicate it. I'm gonna push that into the original so that I have it there in case that I need it. And then I'm gonna create a new folder, and I'm gonna call this the thingy. Alrighty, I'm gonna push that up as well. And within this folder, what I'll do is I'm gonna create, or I'm gonna append a cylinder. And let's push that one there, like at the bottom of it. And I'm gonna use the booleans, right? So I'm gonna use the gizmo to just position this guy like so. So I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees. Scale it. So that's how I'm gonna create those kind of like holes. Actually, I'm gonna show you two ways of doing it. I think this one would be an interesting way of doing it. So it's just going through the entire thing. In fact, we can just hold the Shift key and click on the visibility icon just to hide everything but the selected piece, and just enable those. Another cool thing you can do, which I've been using lately quite a bit, is let's turn everything on again, and just go to V2, and V2 is like visibility sets, and that allows you to, it hides everything, but you can enable the pieces that you want to work on. So that's a lot faster than just selecting and unselecting pieces or toggling on and off. And I can just go to visibility 1 that has everything, and then visibility 2 that has just this bit. Alrighty. It's kind of like a solo mode, including other subtools. That's how I see it, and it's pretty cool. Alrighty, so this one, I'm just gonna give it a black color so that I can sort of pretend this is the empty space. Another thing, when you're looking at it from this angle, you see the shadow that it casts in there. If you want to remove that just for the time being, we can go to render, and we can go to preview shadows, and we can turn that off like the deep shadows, and that way we remove that just for the time being. Also, another tip that you might already know, but it's pretty cool. If you hold the control key and extrude this, or like, yeah, create another one, duplicate it, you can determine kind of like the distance between the two, and then let go of control, and then just keep going, and ZBrush is gonna create multiple pieces based on that distance. I think they're a little bit too big, so let's just scale that. Hold control, click and drag, and then set this 4. I think 4 is fine. I think it would be cool to have like a cut in there actually. All right, so I have that. Now I'm gonna hold control, click and drag, push that up, and then move it this way so that we can offset them a little bit. Let's mask 1, invert the mask, and hold control to add an extra one there. All right. Oops. I'm gonna mask these tops, the top ones. Hang on. Mask, invert, and push that bit. But obviously, let's go back to visibility 1, and I think I need to push this back as well. So select that, control, push this a bit. All right, so I think that works. Right, so go back to visibility set 2. We have this ready to go. One thing though is that because this is a rounded surface, this actually should like curl around, or like should be, yeah, better better established, I suppose. So I'll just do this. I'm gonna mask this, invert the mask. Sorry, I was in the wrong subtool. Again, mask the top ones, invert that mask, bring the gizmo to the unmasked areas, and using the symmetry, I can rotate things around. Make sure that everything is masked properly. It doesn't matter. I mean, just because I'm using symmetry, so I'm gonna hide part of it, and I can delete that. And then I can just go ahead and click on close holes. It's gonna give me this mess, but it doesn't really matter. We don't need this to be a perfect geometry, except in the areas that is actually intersecting the arc piece. So now we can just mask this, invert, center to the unmasked areas, and that's a lot better. So we can rotate this slightly, right? And then, you know, at this point, I don't know why I haven't done it, but the whole point of the live booleans is that you can see what you're doing in real time. So let's take this one, the cylinders, click on the second icon here, which is subtraction, and then click on live booleans. So now we can actually see, let's go visibility 1, we can see what we're doing a little bit better. So I think that's working fine. In fact, I don't think I like this bit in here. Maybe it is too much. So I'm gonna clear the mask, go into solo mode, and I'm gonna automate, auto group this. So every single piece is different. And now I can select these 2 pieces, delete hidden, go back, and now that disappeared. So I think that is working a lot better. All right, so then let's select these bits. So mask the top ones, invert the mask, right? So basically just isolate these with mask, and maybe, I don't know if it's worth adding another one at the top, another row, but that's the whole point of this process. Like, you can easily do that. So let's hold control to duplicate that and rotate that around. And we can push that forward. Maybe 3 will be enough. But yeah, this is the cool thing about it. You can just play around with ideas. In real time. So I think that works. Let's go into solo mode. And again, auto group everything. And I'm gonna get rid of these two. Delete hidden. Okay. So that's working nicely. Yeah, and remember we have the original as well, and because we have this in a folder, it's not affecting anything else, right? So what I want to do is actually let's give this a single polygroup. So Control W, so it's one single polygroup. Then this guy here, I'm gonna play around with some polygroups very quickly. So Control W to assign a single polygroup. Turn off dynamic just for the time being. And let's go to the polygroup palette to show you something else that is pretty cool. Polygroup. And I'm going to go ahead and click on polygroup by normals. So if I click polygroup by normals, ZBrush is going to look at the different normals based on the angle. And that's why you have this max angle tolerance set of 45, an angle of 45. And it will create polygroups very quickly like this, right? So that is really cool. And if I want to maintain certain polygroups, all I have to do is, hold the Alt key, right click, polygroup, and tag that with that, the same polygroup. And I'll probably do the same thing in here. And that is about it, really. So we have pretty decent polygroups. So I do this first because then if I want to do a series measure, that's going to help us do that, when we do it, when we do the series measure. Okay, so dynamic. Let's go to V2 to visualize the live booleans. And another thing I want to do is with these guys here, I'm also going to enable dynamic. Again, this is like a little bit messy here, but don't worry about it. It's as long as the part that is intersecting the other geometry is working, we don't need to worry about the rest. Maybe here there's a little bit of a problem, but yeah, it's all good. And the reason I enable dynamic subdivision is so that we can create a nice smooth Boolean surface. And then we can just try to play with the series measure if we need to. So let's do that. Click on the gear icon again on this folder. And we have two options. We can do Boolean folder or Boolean with subdivision or with dynamic subdivision. We're going to use obviously dynamic subdivision just so that you have that option. And then I'll show you the one without subdivision. So I'm going to click on that. And that created this. Let's fill it with this color. So now this is a single or just a piece that we can use, and we have nice polygroups to, obviously it applied the dynamic subdivision, right? But we have those polygroups that we can use. In fact, let's just isolate those. And assign a single one there. And yeah, maybe another one here. So I'm just fixing the polygroups that I had. So now that I have these polygroups, I could give it a go and just target 5,000 polygons, skipping groups, no smoothing groups, symmetry on, and series measure. Now for series measure, having holes is like a really big deal. Like it's really hard. It's like a really hard mesh to solve, but as you can see, it did a pretty decent job. I mean, you could, if you want to spend like more time, do it manually, but it did a pretty awesome job. Something else you can do at this stage once you have this is to run maybe polish by groups just to soften things a bit, and then you can enable dynamic subdivision again, and you have this nice clean set. Again, it's not perfect like the topology, but it works. I mean, it's just one single click. And you can tweak things as well. Like, see how this one has 2 edge loops. This one has 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. You can fix that, as in you can tweak it yourself. Just go into ZModeler, right click on the edge, go to bevel, click and drag, and then just do that. So I'm just gonna click on all of those that have only 1, so that we can keep it at least consistent with this. Some areas like this need a little bit of work, but again, I think it's just such a minor thing that doesn't look that bad anyway. But this is the type of thing that you can very easily correct if you do it manually. Okay, let me see if I can actually, let's duplicate. I kind of like this one, but let's duplicate it, and then use this, sorry, the select rectangular piece, hide the top one and the inner bit, and then I'm gonna assign a polygroup for the bottom one, front as well. All right, sorry, I'm just like trying to think what to polygroup. So these ones are the ones, the main sort of like loops that I want to keep, or the main polygroups that I want to keep as different polygroups. Then all of these ones I can just hold Control and W and assign a single one. There's still going to be difference between them. So if I go ahead and click on remesh that, let's see what we get. Yep, it's a lot cleaner. We still get an issue here. So this is probably the one that's giving us a hard time. So I think what I can do is just remove, or maybe just polish by groups actually, just to sharpen that edge. That probably helps a bit. And let's go with zero measure again. There we go. So that's fixed. Pretty clean. And then we can go ahead and use the polish by groups again. Quick tweaks in here. And also go to the ZModeler, right click on an edge and add a little bit of bevel just to add sharpness to the inside. Click on dynamic and just do a quick check. Maybe switch to a sharper. Yeah, I think that works quite nice. Alrighty. So let's push that in here. So I will keep the folders as they are. And yeah, I think that's working just fine. Let's do some fine tuning of the shape. But we have like a clean, yeah, a clean piece, which I think is working fine. Alrighty, let's go ahead and add some. We still have like 20 minutes, so again, we'll continue with this the next stream, which still is within this month. So you still have plenty of time to join the challenge and just work on this type of stuff. So what I'll do now is I'm gonna toggle off polypaint, just so that you can see the whole thing better. And I like the silhouette, how things are looking. Yeah, so what I can do is create like the sparky thing, and all of the rest of the, like this is the blockout of the main shape, right? Now I can just concentrate on adding details, either building them myself using the ZModeler and cubes, like Q cubes and ZModeler, or with insert meshes, which is what I'm going to show you. Like, it's very easy once you have everything in place. You can start adding details very, very easily. So let's do that. Actually, I want to take this guy first, just to make it a little bit more interesting before I do the insert meshes. And I'm going to duplicate it. Comics Legend Pablo, is there sculpting work where you only build props? As in, like, as for work, if I've done that, or if there's like a job for that? Is that your question? Okay, I'm gonna delete hidden just to keep that base as it is. And then use the ZModeler. Right click on a face and click on QMesh, polygroup all. I'm gonna extrude that. Give it a different polygroup. Actually, that's not very clean, so let's undo that. Select the gizmo. Center that. Actually, this is also using the home stage, so I can click switch stage. No, this is already a different one. Going to solo mode, and I'm going to rotate around, sort of align the gizmo with the shape, and then flatten that on the y-axis, just so that we have a cleaner shape when we extrude it. So now, click and drag, holding Alt to add a different polygroup. And we can click on the blue one and add an extra loop in there with a different polygroup. So that's nice. And let's enable dynamic subdivision. Right click, insert, and I'm going to add another one around there and another one around there, and push that up. So that's just, again, to be a little bit consistent with what we have here at the bottom as well, just to close that gap. All right, and maybe kind of like a line in going through this one as well. So I can use this polygroup or isolate. Actually, let's duplicate it one more time. And this is once you have this is an important distinction, right? When you're happy with the main shapes and the primary objects, it is very easy to use them as starting points to build something that sort of matches that shape. So that's why I just duplicated that handle, and now I can hold Control and Shift, isolate that. These are all single-sided pieces, so I just isolate these, right? Delete hidden. I'm gonna uncrease all. And use the ZModeler to add thickness to this. Oops. Delete hidden. Hang on, I think. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what I was doing there. So click and drag to add thickness to this. Okay, first I'm just gonna change the angle of this a tiny bit so that I don't mess with the like intersecting geometry. Okay, just something like that, just an extra detail, I suppose. That's what I'm after. Okay, so this bit, enable dynamic, right click on a edge and click on multi-edge loops, and we can scale that. I probably, you know what, let's just inflate things a tiny bit and sharpen some of the edges. So insert with symmetry enable, insert single edge loop. There we go. And I'll just obviously push that in. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay, so in the last 15 minutes I have, I'm just gonna show you that we can build a lot of, you know, additional blocks and complexity using just insert meshes or any basic mesh really. Let me just have a look at the chat. Okay, jobs for creating props. Yeah, absolutely. You can, you know, if you work in a large studio, like it's gonna be, some of the jobs are gonna be so specific that you can just focus on doing props for an environment, right? Or like for this type of things, or just weapons and design. That's that type of props. Yeah, so there's opportunities for that as well. How sorry. Oh, how long have I worked with ZBrush to learn it? And am I using a mouse? So I'm using a tablet and a pen that I just dropped. Sorry. So I'm using a Wacom pen and a Cintiq, and I've been using ZBrush for, I don't know, 15 years or more. Like at the beginning, kind of like on and off, and then I really focused on ZBrush. So all together around 15 years or thereabouts. For hard surface shapes, do you mostly use ZBrush instead of traditional DCC software like Maya, Max? Yeah, I use ZBrush because it's just faster for me. But it is, you know, if you know Maya or you know Blender or anything that you're comfortable with and you work faster that way, that's the same thing. Just for me, I know the tools that I need to use to build what I need to build in hard surface if I need to. So it's faster, but you know, it has some pros and some cons. I feel more creative, so most of the time I'm not copying from a design. I don't have, like, let's say a 2D sketch and then I'm building based on that. Most of my time, at least when I work in like freelance and that sort of thing, or my personal projects, I jump into ZBrush and I design things from ZBrush. So I do the sketching process in 3D as well. So that allows me to be more flexible. So yeah, I approach the hard surface modeling in the same way that I would any organic modeling. Hopefully that helps. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and append anything. It doesn't matter what it is. This ring 3D, I'm gonna turn it into a Q cube, and I'm just gonna hide it in there, and I'm gonna give it a red color, just to know, so I know that that's the one that I'm using. And then I'm gonna use something like the IMM kit modeler. So I'm gonna start adding some interesting shapes. The first one I wanna use, I don't think it's in here actually. These ones come with ZBrush, by the way. So I think the one I wanna use is in this machine thing. Yeah, so I'm gonna use this as like the sparking thing. So I'm gonna use this piece. To click and drag there. Right, so we have that piece already in there. That looks cool. I'm gonna just reset it so that I make sure it's in the points in the right direction. There we go. And we can also click on dynamic so that we can immediately I mean, the dynamic is being applied to the cube. So that's pretty cool, right? Do you recommend? Do I recommend any guide for creating your own brushes or customizing them? Yeah. In fact, we just finished a workshop that is all about that. I mean, it's not just brushes. It's creating your own assets. So check out the 3D Concept Artist website. I can send you a link if you wanna check that out. Because it's all about that. It's just creating your own assets. You can obviously we build things in ZBrush, as in brushes in ZBrush, but we also do materials in Substance 3D Painter, 3D Stager, 3D Sampler, a bunch of things. So let me just find it for you. Basically, this is the website. So if you go to 3D Concept Artist, right, and click on this one, I'll send you the link in there. Yeah, you can just click on and have a look at what the workshop is all about. It's an intensive, self-paced workshop. So these are the recordings. It's an intensive course based on the recordings of a live workshop that I did a while back. But yeah, we do lots of different things: materials, brushes, alphas, everything. And I teach a methodology that I use myself to build assets and to basically repurpose everything that you create. So it's pretty cool. If that's, if you're interested in that sort of thing, that probably is a good starting point. Alrighty, so I'm gonna use a couple more things. So this is the little sparking thing. And I think it makes sense to have it there. But you can see, like, those little things, they don't really change the silhouette that much. That's why I'm having this thing in here. But it helps to add a lot of complexity to the project. I'm gonna go ahead and switch to the IMM model kit. And maybe just add this bit in here. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, I think that's cool. It's kind of like a way of carrying it. And we need something to connect this into a cylinder, probably. So we can also, let's use this one. Let me think about a cool way of connecting this thing. I guess my point with this IMM brushes is that you can add lots of different details and complexity very quickly once you have the blockout, really. That's the point. Okay, I think I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add a mesh in here. And by all means, like, once you insert something like one of these IMM brushes, you can, because they're like really low res, you can add anything you want with the ZModeler. So you can just, connect these things together. So for example, I'm just thinking, we still have a bit of time, so I'm just thinking how to connect this. You know what? I'm just gonna use like a simpler object. So IMM primitives. And I'm going to click on this extended cylinder. It's pretty cool. And I'm going to add it here just because this is a flat plane on the camera angle that I need. And if I just drag it into the cylinder, it's going to have the normal of the cylinder. So if I click here, you see it's just pointing in an awkward direction. But if I click here, it's going to be in that area. You can still do it this way and then just go to the gizmo and then reset the rotation, which is fine. So either way. So I'm going to make it 90 degrees. Scale that's a little bit. And this is what I meant about tweaking this with the ZModeler. So I'm gonna clear the mask first, right click, insert single edge loop to sharpen this, both angles or both edges, like so. And then I can just hold Control and Shift to, with the select rectangular piece, mask everything except this cylinder. Go back to dynamic. And we can just play around with the placement of this. Okay, I think something like that should be okay. Again, like I said, I'm kind of like figuring out the design a little bit as I play around with this, with the placement of these shapes. And let's go ahead and add a connection here. Oops. All right, so I'm just gonna rotate this on the y-axis, holding Shift, so 90 degrees. And let's go ahead and push this. Actually, let's push it out first. Turn off dynamic, and then we can kind of like hold Control and Shift, delete this part, delete hidden, go back to dynamic, and then center that. So I just removed that bit, and this is kind of like a handle or like something to hold things, but just removing a little bit just becomes kind of like a pipe as well, I suppose. So that's what I'm trying to achieve here. All right, so I think that makes a lot more sense. Clear that. Alrighty, so I think that's working. Maybe let's just add a bit of an angle, see if that makes it more interesting. Oops. Invert the mask. Yeah, I think a little bit of an angle for this works better, and maybe there's like a safety switch or something here that we can add later. That, you know, if you hold it like this, the gun, maybe the thumb can just, you know, like the safety switch or something might be there. Let's see if we can tweak something from the machine. So there's this wire harness thing that is pretty handy. I'm gonna drag one in there, and I'm gonna split hidden. So, oh sorry, split on mask points, so that I have that in a separate mesh. Just want to see if I can place it maybe around here to hold that tube. All right, so I think that works, but obviously we need something else here, which, you know, again, the IMM brushes are usually things that you can add as a detail, but you can also use them to build to build blocks of, yeah, whatever. So I'm gonna add this one there, reset the rotation, rotate at 90 degrees, and then just add a bit of maybe the other way around. And just add a bit of thickness in there. Cool. So that's done. Again, just using IMM brushes, and we can add some kind of like, maybe something like this, like a fastener. And I'm just gonna duplicate this down. Actually, sorry, I'm just trying to figure out what to do here. I think it's fine. Just duplicate this towards the bottom so that it feels like there is something in between that gap to hold everything together. Yeah, so that's the type of thing that I think it's really cool from the IMM brushes once you have the blockout. Again, if you pay attention to the silhouette, for the most part, it hasn't changed much. So I will treat this stage as adding secondary details or secondary volumes, because the silhouette and what we have here on the right or on the left hasn't changed much. It's more about refining how things are placed together, really. Okay, so I think we are done for today. Let me just check the chat. Would you say that is it possible to work in ZBrush in an accurately way? Yeah, I'm not sure if I get the question. You mean like if you want to have like measurements and moving things by numbers or something? Because I mean, I work with ZBrush pretty accurately, I think, but it's not, I don't know if that's the question. Anyway, so remember the art challenge is still on. Make sure that you check it out in the Discord channel. So this hopefully gives you an idea of like how to develop and work on your own props. Well, even if you're not going into the challenge, something that hopefully helps. We'll leave it here, and then in the next stream we'll just focus on yeah, working on more details. All right, so have a good one, guys, and I'll see you next time.